Hello, we're going to talk about immunotherapy. This is a typical T lymphocyte. It has PD-1 receptors on it. This is the cancer cell. It has nothing on it. The ideal way for a T lymphocyte to work is that they just and then the cancer cell would be like dead. That's how ideally it should work. However, that's not typical of all cancer cells. Cancer cells will usually be shielded with PD-L1 receptors all around it. It's almost the same type of receptor as the T lymphocyte. T lymphocytes have PD-1 receptors. So when these two come into contact, the cancer cell is basically shielded from the T lymphocyte because these two receptors, they will just bind to each other, effectively causing no harm to the cancer cell. What scientists are doing now is having a drug basically that has like particles that will bind to the PD-L1 of the cancer cell or the PD-1 for the T lymphocyte, effectively just making them disappear. One type of immunotherapy is PD-1 inhibitors. T lymphocyte has PD-1 receptors. The drugs that you could take will inhibit PD-1, so then when it comes in contact with a cancer cell with PD-L1, they effectively bypass the shield because none of the receptors on the T lymphocyte will bind to the receptors on the PD-L1 for the cancer cell, basically killing the cancer cell. Another type would be PD-L1 inhibitors, which does the same thing to the cancer cell. All the cancer cells with the PD-L1 receptors will now be inhibited with the PD-L1 inhibitors, which makes all the receptors on the cancer cell basically useless against a T lymphocyte. I know this is like already colored in, but just pretend it's not there. T lymphocyte will have nothing to bind to with the cancer cell because all the cancer cells are inhibited by the PD-L1 inhibitors. This basically also just bypasses the cancer cell because there's basically no shield around it. PD-L1 receptors are usually found on normal cells and sometimes on cancer cells. Cancer cells have been evolved to take PD-L1 receptors so they could technically be shielded from T lymphocytes. The PD-1 on the T lymphocyte is the off switch that helps keep the T cells from attacking other cells in the body. When it binds to a PD-L1 receptor, it basically tells the T lymphocyte, oh, it's a normal cell, so I won't attack it. It's a safe cell. This is how cancer cells are technically shielded. There's pros and cons to having PD-L1 inhibitors or PD-1 inhibitors. This type of immunotherapy is very effective against several types of cancer, including melanoma of the skin, kidney cancer, bladder cancer, head and neck cancers, or many other cancers. The PD-L1 type inhibitors would be very effective against skin cancer, bladder cancer, and other cancers also. There are many drugs that target either PD-1 or PD-L1, and they can be combined together, making them both inhibited, or they could be just taken one by one depending on the type of the situation. The cons for this type of immunotherapy is that majority of the cells in our body will have PD-L1 because they are all normal cells. There's a small chance that, say, if you after you take a PD-L1 drug, it would inhibit the normal cells, which would make the T lymphocyte come in contact with the normal cells and say, oh, this is not a normal cell, it's time for me to destroy it. Another con would be that they could target important organs in the cell, in the body. It could target lungs, intestines, liver, kidney, hormone-making glands, and other organs. There's some side effects to this type of immunotherapy too. The side effects are fatigue, coughing, nausea, loss of appetite, skin rashes, and itching. However, if you think about it, it's not that bad compared to chemotherapy, and usually results are seen very quick compared to chemotherapy too. Chemotherapy works by using radiation, targeted radiation, into the cancer cell area. There's a chance that the radiation might leak into the normal cells in the surrounding area of the cancer cell. So then that's a major con of chemotherapy. However, one advantage that chemotherapy has over, let's say, immunotherapy with PD-L1 or PD-1 inhibitors is that you don't need to know the sequence for the receptors for specific cancer types cells. Each cancer cell has a different type of PD-L1 receptors, and each cancer requires time and effort to find out the sequence so you could generate the drug and make sure the inhibitors are correct and matching with the receptors for the cancer cell or T lymphocyte. Another advantage over immunotherapy that chemotherapy has is that it's widely available for the majority of the population. The last type of immunotherapy that I would like to talk about is called chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy. What they do is they take a T cell from the bloodstream of a patient and they extract it out. They mix the T cell with specific antigen receptors all over the surface, and they look like this. Wrong one. They look like this. After this, they inject it back into the bloodstream of the patient, and the T cells will actively seek out cancer cells and attack it. This type of immunotherapy is typically used as a last ditch effort after traditional therapy doesn't work. It's used for high level or hard to treat leukemias and lymphomas. Not much research is known about it yet because it is still pretty new, and there's no definite pros or cons compared to other types of immunotherapy or chemotherapy. There's very few CAR T therapies being studied right now, and they're only for clinical trials for patients where this is the last ditch effort to cure the cancer. So we talked about PD-1 receptors, PD-L1 receptors, and their inhibitors. We talked about chemotherapy, how they use targeted radiation onto the cancer cell, and how it might spread to the normal cells in the surrounding area. And we also talked about how T cells become T cells with CARs. They're all very valid therapies for cancer, and they all have their pros and cons. Say for chemotherapy, it's widely available, and most of the hospitals should have equipment for chemotherapy. However, the radiation could damage the normal cells in the surrounding area. That's one of the cons. This type of immunotherapy is still not as popular as chemotherapy, but it's still there. It's effective against many types of cancers, and the bad side about this type of immunotherapy is that the inhibitors for the PD-L1 can and might inhibit organs and cells, normal organs and cells in the human body, making the T lymphocyte attack the normal cells. And last but not least, there's not much information about the pros and cons about this one. This is used as a last-ditch effort for patients that have recurring cancer or cancer that has no more treatment available. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.